Version 5.7's Archon Quest A Space and Time for You might just be the most important lore drop we've had in Genshin Impact so far. Between Dainsleif's long-awaited return, a mysterious Conrian girl named Diridith, and a key that ties directly to the Traveler's spaceship, this quest gave us answers but also raised even more questions. Which is what I look forward to in every Archon quest because it's what keeps you coming back for more. In today's video, I'll start with a quick recap of the Archon quest so we can piece together exactly what happened. The timeline is confusing, especially with Istaroth's involvement and the time paradox that happens. We'll break that down step by step. Hopefully you guys like today's fit. Then we'll dive into some of the bigger theories this quest opened up. Why was the unknown god watching the conversation between the traveler and their sibling? What is the true purpose of the Entei Vat flower and how did it even end up in Khaenri'ah? Is Kaya from the future? What are the Tsaritsa and the Fatui planning? And most importantly, is Teyvat more than just a battleground between gods, dragons, and mortals? Could it actually be an ark built to survive something far greater? Let's break it all down, what we know, what we can guess, and what this could mean for the future of the story. But first, a word from today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Red Magic, and they've just dropped the Red Magic 10S Pro, the sleekest, smartest, most powerful gaming phone I've ever held. It's capable of running Genshin like a dream, and it's built for gamers, power users, and tech lovers who demand the absolute best. This phone looks insane. No camera bump, just a smooth flat back with that transparent metal finish and subtle RGB lighting that reacts to text, calls, and notifications, as well as customizable shoulder triggers for your gaming needs. The Snapdragon 8 Elite leading version brings lightning-fast performance, cutting-edge power efficiency, and elite-level multitasking. It handles everything from mobile gaming to real-time AI tasks like a pro while keeping your data secure. The screen is a 6.85-inch full display with an unbelievable 95.3% screen-to-body ratio, the highest ever seen. With ultra-slim bezels and hitting up to 2,000 nits of peak brightness, it's beautifully built for total visual immersion. The Ice X cooling system features a 10-layer structure in Liquid Metal 2.0, improving thermal conductivity and lowering CPU temps by up to 5 degrees Celsius. Stable, smooth, and cool even during demanding gameplay or multitasking. A 7,050 mAh battery with 80-watt fast charging keeps you going all day and safely too. While in use, the phone avoids heat buildup and protects the battery's lifespan. With 50 megapixel cameras, you're capturing crystal clear shots even in low light, plus a wide-angle lens with advanced distortion correction for crisp visuals. Whether you're dodging bosses or just chilling in Mondstadt, the Red Magic 10S Pro is the phone that turns your mobile gaming into an elite level experience. Use the link in the description or pinned comment down below to get your Red Magic 10S Pro today. Thank you so much, Red Magic, for sponsoring today's video. A Space and Time for You begins near the Collective of Plenty. With everyone preparing for a bodybuilding competition, patrol duties are understaffed, so the traveler steps in to help. During patrol, they find a cave and inside a sleeping hilichurl. It runs off, leaving behind something strange, a shiny object that turns out to be a key to the hibernation chamber of Traveler's spaceship. Only 2 of these keys exist, one for the traveler and one for their sibling. Since the traveler still has theirs, this one must belong to their sibling. Paimon suspects they lost it nearby and that the hilichurl might have stolen it, which means the Abyss sibling could be in Natlan. Before they can investigate, Yansan arrives with news. The bodybuilding competition is cancelled because the Abyss Order just attacked. And not just a skirmish, this is large-scale and organized, something Natlan hasn't seen since the recent war. Yansan sends them to Mawika for intel. Mawika confirms the Abyss Order has been hitting multiple tribes at once. She offers the traveler a place to stay out of it, but the traveler insists on getting involved. After all, this is personal. Their sibling is the leader of the Abyss Order. Understandably, Mawika wants to make sure the traveler's loyalty lies with Natlan, not with their sibling. Once that's cleared up, she points them toward the Masters of the Nightwind, where the attacks have been concentrated. Traveler, Paimon, Yansan, and Citlali help the Masters of the Nightwind fight off the Abyss Order, but still can't figure out what the Abyss is planning. With no leads, they return to the cave where they found the spaceship key, only to find a girl instead. Not just any girl, a Conrian. She seems to recognize the traveler but quickly tells them to run, warning that monsters are coming. The traveler sees nothing until they touch her hand, and rift wolves suddenly appear. After fighting them off, the traveler touches her hand again to confirm what happened, flustering her.
When I saw her, I was already on edge because I knew exactly where the story was headed and I really didn't want it to go there.
The girl introduces herself as Diridith. Still injured, she's brought to a nearby cave where she explains she's searching for a savior mentioned in a prophecy, a figure meant to stop a coming doomsday. Her grandmother begged her to find this savior. When she met the traveler, everything matched, except their gender. That's when Traveler realizes Diridith is actually looking for their sibling. While she stays in the cave to recover, the traveler and Paimon return to the Masters of the Nightwind. Yansan asks them to check with the guards, who report that the Abyss Order's just meditating. Odd. Then Citlali shows up and explains that she sensed a strange noise in the ley lines, something out of sync with Natlan's dimension. She says it's time to drive the Abyss Order out, but they'll need the tribal chief's support. Curious, the traveler asks if she's ever heard of people seeing monsters that others can't. Citlali hasn't, so the traveler explains their encounter with Diridith. The moment they mention holding her hand, Citlali immediately gets jealous.
And look, I know some people hate when characters have crushes on the traveler, but I think it's cute. It's a normal feeling to have. It's fun. Let a girlie be dramatic. I'm still Dainsleif's #1 glazer and wife, but at the end of the day, they're just fictional characters.
I don't think this trait diminishes the greatness of any one character. Charm can be found in it, and I love Citlali and Diridith in this quest. Anyway, Citlali is instantly suspicious of Diridith, but Yansan thinks it's worth checking on her and gauging if she's a spy of the Abyss Order or not. Traveler returns to the cave, and later that night, under the stars, Diridith wonders aloud if the sky is even real. That line alone makes the traveler suspect she might know about the false sky. But there's no time to ask. Diridith suddenly senses monsters, and the traveler holds her hand again to reveal and defeat them. Just to be safe, the traveler decides to stay the night. While sleeping, they slip into a vision of the Night Kingdom, where their sibling is speaking with the Lord of the Night. A splitting headache hits, a mysterious voice whispers about doomsday and the birth of a savior. When the traveler wakes up, they realize Diridith had been holding their hand the whole time. And Paimon is not thrilled. This part was hilarious, okay? As morning breaks, the traveler leaves Diridith some ingredients to cook with before she resumes her journey. Diridith's not sure how to contact them again, so Paimon suggests writing to Mawika, though Diridith has no clue who that is. Which immediately sets off those lore alarm bells, cause who the heck doesn't know Mawika? Back at the tribe, Yansan reports that the Abyss Order's front lines were destroyed by a single warrior. And I think we all know who that is. Dainsleif shows up, surprised to see us. He doesn't know the Order's plan, but he wants to stop them for good. The traveler tells him about Diridith and the Savior prophecy, and Dainsleif recognizes the term. It was used to refer to the sibling before the cataclysm. He theorizes that Diridith is a pure-blooded Conrian from an isolated group of immortal survivors. The next day, the Signs of the Canopy locate the Abyss Order's stronghold in Ochkanatlan. Dainsleif charges in alone, with the traveler tagging along. My love language is acts of service, so I made Dainsleif do all the work. Together, we crush the Order's defenses, but the sibling isn't there. At the center, they meet an iniquitous Baptist who says the sibling has already succeeded. They've used the Loom of Fate to reweave Conria's ley lines. Dainsleif refuses to believe it, but the Baptist hints it's already in motion. The traveler realizes Diridith is from the past. The past of Conria is overlapping with the present of Natlan. After the fight, Dainsleif stays behind to clean up. The Baptist wounds him. My heart literally fell to my ass during this part, then reveals himself as Hayden, Dainsleif's old master. Hayden admits he lied about Conria's revival. The real goal was to steal Dainsleif's memories, which are needed to rebuild Conria's ley lines. Dainsleif kills him again and again for this betrayal. The traveler meets Diridith again. They get a glimpse of what the cataclysm looked like, and everything clicks. Diridith is from 500 years ago. Time paradoxes can get really convoluted and crazy, so I'm going to try to explain what happens next in the simplest way. Istaroth, as the ruler of time, probably had a direct hand in making it possible for Diridith from the past to meet the traveler in the future. Imagine 2 points in a timeline running in parallel. Imagine these 2 points blending into each other. This is the simplest way I think I can convey it without making it seem like Diridith went through a portal or something. After Diridith met the traveler in the future, she returned to the past and showed the key to the sibling, proof their twin was looking for them. That moment convinced the sibling to leave Conria at its most desperate hour, a decision that still haunts them to this day. Diridith was the sleeping Hilichurl from the start of the quest. After the cataclysm, she held onto the key for 500 years, even as she was cursed into a Hilichurl. She could have run away from Traveler at the beginning of the quest because she didn't want us to see her like that. The siblings' master plan is to resurrect Conria by reweaving its ley lines. To fire up the Loom of Fate, they needed 2 things: a staging ground and memories of Conria. The Lord of the Night loans her a patch of Natlan, so for a short time, Conria's ley lines run as a ghost layer right on top of Natlan's. Istaroth, the ruler of time, bridges the gap so the traveler can literally see that hidden layer. Grabbing Diridith's hand acts like a tuner, snapping their vision to the Conrian frequency. Dainsleif's memories plus the Abyss Order's group meditation sessions supply the memory field needed for the Loom of Fate to complete its objective. With those inputs, the sibling forges the Atlas of the New World, a blueprint of new Conria's ley lines.
Can we talk about that name for a second? Because I love it.
In Greek mythology, Atlas was a titan who got slapped with the ultimate punishment, holding up the celestial heavens for eternity, because he sided with the Titans in their war against the Olympian gods. He's also tied to navigation and astronomy, often shown carrying a celestial globe or the pillars that divide earth and sky. It's so fitting for the sibling, someone literally bearing the weight of a fallen nation. No, a fallen world on their shoulders. The Loom of Fate was a powerful device capable of weaving its own ley lines into the planet. Originally, Caribert was meant to become the Loom, but he died at just 8 years old while being used as fodder for its construction. Though his body was lost, a fragment of his consciousness remained, allowing him to control the Loom in its incomplete state. Using its ability to implant false memories, Caribert tricked Dainsleif and helped the Abyss Order steal the Eye of the First Field Tiller, a key component needed to complete the Loom. Using an Entei Vat as the base for Conria's new construction and the powers of the Loom, the sibling grew a replica of Conria atop present-day Natlan, superimposing the memories of the old nation onto new land. Because the Entei Vat only grows in Conria, it carries an imprint of its soil and space-time. The new realm was infused with memories from meditating Abyss Order members and stolen memories from Dainsleif. And with that, the sibling created the Atlas of the New World, the blueprint for a reborn Conria. Now the sibling needs one last thing, a permanent physical location sturdy enough to host that blueprint. And I have just the perfect place for some new Conria real estate. Conria was an underground nation, so I'd suppose they'd want to try living in the sky now. In all fairness, it's more likely that Conria will find room in the Dark Sea. The monsters and godlike beings that lurk there already hate the Archons and Celestia, so I think they'd get along swimmingly as neighbors. The sibling wants to face the heavenly principles as an equal, and to do that they need the power of an entire world behind them. But it seems the sustainer of heavenly principles is already listening in. And girl, when I find you. If you give Diridith the key, it disappears from your inventory. If you keep the key, the sibling gives Diridith their hibernation chamber key, ensuring this time loop continues. So don't feel bad if you chose one over the other. Fate was inevitable. Back at the Masters of the Nightwind, the traveler meets with Yansan and Citlali. Citlali is shocked by the Lord of the Night's decision to let the sibling essentially rewrite reality. The Lord of the Night allowed it only after ensuring that Len wouldn't be harmed, and gave one final condition she didn't share. Also, quick clarification, Capitano is not the Lord of the Night. His life force was handed over to the Lord of the Night, and now the curse of immortality placed on Capitano is what's keeping her alive indefinitely. The Lord of the Night is still in control. Capitano's just the fuel, for now. Yansan offers a feast in the traveler's honor, but they quietly decline and return to the cave. As they drift off to sleep, someone holds their hand. Thus ends A Space and Time for You. At the end of this quest, there's a glitch that actually lets you re-enter the domain where you witnessed the cataclysm. Meaning, you can bring your favorite characters in to relive the horrors of one of Teyvat's darkest moments. Truly a 10 out of 10 vacation spot. Also, did anyone else notice the resin symbol quietly change from whole to broken? Very sus, especially with the moon lore and Nodcry content on the horizon. And just in case you missed it, Traveler's Character Story 3 has been added this patch with new details pulled directly from this Archon quest, so definitely give it a read. Diridith, Caribert, and the Chasm Archon quest all exist for one reason:
to make you feel bad about killing Hilichurls.
Diridith was a Conrian who grew up on her grandmother's stories about a savior, someone destined to save Conria from a prophesized doomsday. She lived in a surface village that still had access to the sky. This is just a theory, but while Conria's main city was underground, it seems their territory eventually reached the surface. Diridith's home is likely one of those outposts. But after the cataclysm, Diridith was punished with the Curse of the Wilderness, turning her into a Hilichurl. The curse mainly affected non-pure-blooded Conrians, including those who left the lands of the gods. Despite this curse, she protected this alien key. I also can't help but wonder if that alien key had something to do with preserving Diridith's mind and memories. After all, the Traveler has shown a ton of resistance to corruption, almost like their physiology or whatever tech they brought from their home planet is built to withstand it. Diridith, even after centuries and Hilichurl transformation, still remembered the key, the cave, the Traveler, and the hand-holding. Diridith was innocent. She gave the sibling the hope they needed to find their sibling, but also unknowingly caused them to abandon Conria during its darkest hour. It's hard to blame her, and in her defense, there's no guarantee the sibling could have stopped the cataclysm even if they had stayed. While Diridith represents Conria's hope and innocence, Hayden reminds us of its corruption and the darkness it left behind. Hayden is the iniquitous Baptist we fought alongside Dainsleif. But before he became an immortal creature of the Abyss, he was Dainsleif's master, the one who taught him and Sirtologi the Black Serpent blade work. The Sirtologi, who later became Skirk's master and one of the infamous Five Sinners. Back in the Conrian Knight Academy, Hayden wore a mask of virtue while crushing the next generation beneath him. He preached chivalry, but behind the scenes, he silenced rising talents to secure his own prestige. Dainsleif got punished for being restless and brash, while Sirtologi, who faithfully lived the code of knighthood, was prosecuted and even lost limbs for it. Dainsleif hates Hayden, and he feels Hayden deserves to die 100 times over for his past and present corruption. But even with all that history, he never expected Hayden to join the Abyss Order. Now reborn in the Abyss, Hayden says he supports the siblings' mission because, as Conrians, they have no one else. Not the Archons, definitely not Celestia, not anyone in Teyvat. Whether he's sincere or just manipulating us again, that's up to us to ponder. But Hayden wasn't the only ghost from Dainsleif's past we're reminded of, because nothing cuts deeper than a betrayal from a friend. According to Skirk, Dainsleif and Sirtologi were once best friends. Sirtologi is a pretty deplorable person, and he went from being a loyal knight who once upheld Conria's code of honor to becoming one of the infamous Five Sinners. When Dainsleif recognized Skirk's blade work during their encounter, he instantly knew who trained her. He was immediately angry and demanded to know where Sirtologi was. Because of this, Skirk makes it clear that she'd rather not cross paths with Dainsleif again. Speaking of Dainsleif, this man has been aura farming this entire quest. He's dropping some of the hardest lines we've ever heard in a while, but when does he not? One of my favorites is when he snubs Yansan and goes,
Yansa, 彼女の名前は覚えた。七神の民と関わるときは感情移入しない。 これが俺の心情だ。
Like, we love a king with strong social boundaries, slay. And then there's
奴らが何を企んでいるのかは知らないが、これだけの犠牲をも厭わないというなら、奴らの想定をはるかに超える犠牲を強いてやろう。
heat. He wipes out an entire Abyss frontline alone with no weapon. So Dainsleif's just been raw-dogging enemies with his fists. I mean, look at those physical damage numbers. Eula could never.
I only get to act like this once a year, so I think I deserve a pass.
He tried forging a weapon with Wagner, but Wagner couldn't identify the materials Dane was asking for. The Abyss Order was desperate for Dainsleif's memories because they needed them to rebuild Conria's ley lines as accurately as possible. They're literally throwing armies at him just to extract that information, which he's able to then effortlessly wipe out over and over again. In the Sumeru world quest, Kavrian of Good and Evil, Zervan mentioned that half of Dainsleif's body had turned into a monster and he was clutching a ring.
It's my engagement ring, guys.
This quest confirms the theory we've been talking about in previous videos, so that was a pleasant surprise. Hayden tells us that Dainsleif's memories and potentially his body haven't deteriorated like the other cursed Conrians because of that ring, which was gifted to him by his older brother Vedrfolnir. It constantly resets his body's condition, which is likely what's kept him from turning into a full Abyss creature. There's still more to theorize about this ring since we don't know exactly what it is yet. We've theorized in the past that this ring could be based off the Ring of Nibelung from the Germanic opera written by Richard Wagner. In the story, the ring is forged from gold stolen from the Rhine maidens by the dwarf Alberic and grants its wielder the power to rule the world. It's steeped in themes of power, sacrifice, the death of the gods, and what humanity is left to inherit in their absence. Wagner's core message is that we can't truly live as free beings until we recognize and cherish the sacred moments of life. And honestly, that hits so hard for Dainsleif, a man clinging to honor, memory, and meaning in a world ruled by gods that want him dead. Nibelung is also the name of the Dragon King of Teyvat, who was defeated by the Heavenly Principles. So if this ring really does come from that Nibelung, there's a real chance it carries his fallen power. But this is just theory and speculation. But what's confirmed is that this special ring that Dainsleif received from his brother constantly resets his body's condition, which is what's kept him from turning into a full Abyss creature. Vedrfolnir is his older brother, a powerful visionary and one of the 5 sinners. He was imprisoned and blinded in both eyes for delivering a prophecy the king didn't like, and I really want to know what this prophecy was. Was it the prophecy of Doomsday? Dainsleif rescued Vedrfolnir, but they eventually went separate ways. Vedrfolnir turned to the Abyss and is the one who ultimately convinced the traveler's sibling to do the same. This Archon quest might actually directly link to the prophecy in Dainsleif's character introduction. Dainsleif is called the confluence of the past and the future, the point where 2 timelines converge. His memories of Conria's past inadvertently helped to create the blueprints of future Conria. Dainsleif's strength is unreal, but it's the weight of everything he's carrying, his past, his memories, his hatred, that makes him one of the most tragic and compelling characters in the entire game, and the love of my life. In this Archon quest, Hayden also drops a wild line about the sibling. He tells Dainsleif we knew that the great abyssal power within the sibling had been divided up. And that might sound vague at first until you realize it connects to one of the most insane lore drops hidden in the most unexpected place, the Xbox glider. Wings of Fate's course intertwined. That glider has lore written from Dainsleif's perspective. In it, he recalls King Irmin proclaiming the sibling as Prince or Princess of Conria. But it gets darker. He says the sibling was used as a vessel to absorb unlimited abyssal power, and that they became the key to the world's near annihilation. In hindsight, it's such a clever play on words because now we know a literal key led to them abandoning their post during the Cataclysm. If the sibling held all that power, and Hayden says it was later divided, it's possible that unlimited power got split among the 5 sinners, each carrying a fragment of whatever abyssal force the sibling once contained. The siblings' loyalty to Conria runs deep, and some of that may come from guilt. They were supposed to protect it, and instead, they left. But I've got a theory about why their devotion is so extreme, and we'll get into that in a bit. So, unlimited abyss power split 5 ways which will later be used to fight against Celestia. Deja vu, right? history's repeating itself. The Dragon King Nibelung once tried to harness the power of the Abyss to overthrow the heavenly principles. And now, centuries later, Khaenri'ah was preparing to do the exact same thing. But what exactly triggered this doomsday event is still unclear. Rhine-daughter, Albedo's mother, is often blamed for unleashing monstrous creations that ravage the world, but some records suggest she was retaliating, which would mean Khaenri'ah didn't strike first. It was so crazy to see the unknown god's cubes, and she's actually shown spying on the conversation between the traveler and the sibling. She calls herself the sustainer of heavenly principles, and based on everything we've pieced together, there's a strong case she's one of the four rulers or shining shades. There's been a running theme with the artifacts. The Flower of Life could be tied to Nibirius, the ruler of life, the Feather of Death to Renova, the ruler of death, the Sands of Aeon to Istaroth, the ruler of time. That leaves the Goblet of Yonathem possibly representing the ruler of space, which might represent the unknown god herself. The title Sustainer was always eerie to me. In the Natzissenkreuz world quest, René de Petrichor defines a descender as one who can protect, sustain, destroy, and create a world. That lines up a little too close with the rulers. Istaroth protects, Renova destroys, Nibirius creates, and the unknown god sustains. Each shade is a fragment of the heavenly principles itself, split to maintain omnipresence or maybe to avoid total destruction. After all, it's said the heavenly principles created the shades from itself. Which brings us back to the five sinners. If our theory from the last video holds, they're not just trying to revive Khaenri'ah, they're aiming to replace the heavenly principles by merging with the rulers. Rhine-daughter fusing with Nibirius may have already taken out its creation aspect. And if the others follow suit, the heavenly principles might lose itself entirely.
Alright, so I need to share one of my absolute favorite theories that I've ever worked on.
In the bedtime story Archon quest, the traveler asks their sibling, "Why can't we finish this journey together?" The sibling gives a vague answer. They reached a place called the Sea of Flowers at the end, while the traveler was still asleep. A place filled with Intevats, the flower the traveler once wished to see in full bloom. The sibling sees it as a coincidence, but says they can't leave Tevat until the war ends and they find the final answer. Here's what I think that means. In the Natzissenkreuz quest, the traveler says the Intevat is from their home planet, but it's also Khaenri'ah's national flower. So when the siblings saw a whole field of them in Tevat, they probably took it as a sign that this was where their people belonged, that their purpose was here. But how did the Intevat even get to Khaenri'ah? Paraneri's books and Arlecchino's backstory suggest Khaenri'ah once summoned outlanders from other worlds. Someone from the traveler's home planet might have brought the flower to Tevat long before they and their sibling ever arrived. That's why the sibling stayed. Why Lumine already wears Intevats in her hair whether you choose her as your traveler or not. And this realization hits even harder when you look at their character cards. Lumine says your homeland has already been destroyed. You were originally supposed to own the world. Were they looking for new worlds to save a dying home? Were they not the first from their planet to arrive in Tevat? But the recent time-bending shenanigans open up a second possibility. We know Istaroth helped Makoto warp time to plant the sacred sakura in Inazuma. Future A plants the seed in the past, and Istaroth makes it grow for thousands of years. In this recent Archon quest, Istaroth lets Diridith take the traveler's key from the future back to the sibling 500 years ago in the past. Istaroth could have let someone in the future carry Intevat seeds into Khaenri'ah's past. In other words, the flower could be there because of a closed time loop orchestrated by the ruler of time. For example, future Lumine plants the Intevat in her hair in the past, and Istaroth allows that one flower to bloom into an entire field across time. But all of this has got me thinking. In a similar manner, what if something or someone can be sent from the future to the past?
What if that someone is Kaeya?
What if he's not just from old Khaenri'ah, but from new Khaenri'ah? What if his father sent him back in time for a reason? New Khaenri'ah was built from memories of a world that was destroyed. So what happens if those same memories are flawed, unstable, or destined to repeat the same fate? If Kaeya's from the future, what was he meant to change? If Kaeya really came from future new Khaenri'ah to the past in Mondstadt, shouldn't he know what's coming? Maybe, or maybe not. To travel through time, he would have needed the power of Istaroth, the ruler of time, and using a ruler's power always comes with a price. When Mawika used the ruler of death's power, the cost was her life. Istaroth is also known as the goddess of moments, memories. So the cost of using her powers might be memories. We don't know how much Kaya remembers about his past, or rather his life in the future. He certainly isn't saying much. It's possible the memory sacrifice wasn't even his. His birth father may have given up his own memories so Kaya could survive the jump to the past. That could be why Kaya is considered Conria's last hope, and possibly the last of the Alberic clan with the plans to save New Conria. Honestly, I have so much to unpack here that Kaya might need a dedicated video of his own. His connection to Conria, his father, his role in Mondstadt, because it's all adding up to something much bigger than we thought. And I think it's time we gave him a dedicated video on this channel. I have so many thoughts on this, so I'll compile it into a video shortly after this one gets uploaded. Going back to A Space and Time for You, there's probably a much bigger time paradox at play than we even realize. Because if both Aether and Lumine are canon travelers, then we might be stuck in a massive time loop, one that Istaroth, the ruler of time, is actively orchestrating. What if this isn't the first time the twins have been through this cycle? What if they've both already played the role of the traveler and the Abyss sibling before? Each time the loop resets, one wakes up, the other falls to the Abyss. And Istaroth could be watching it all unfold like a cosmic experiment, trying to see which twin can culminate the most experience and knowledge to finally break the pattern and make a different choice. And maybe, just maybe this time, we're getting close to breaking the cycle and defying fate itself. In the world of Genshin Impact, fate is an inevitable force. It weaves through the stars and decides who rises and who falls. But not everyone accepts fate's unforgiving script. Across Teyvat, powerful factions are rising, each with their own vision for what the world should be, and each willing to challenge the divine order that has ruled for aeons. The Abyss Order is working to bring back Conria, the fallen nation from 500 years ago. Their goal is to recreate the past using memory, revive the old, and in doing so, rewrite the present. Meanwhile, the Fatui, led by the Tsaritsa and her Harbingers, have a very different plan. Instead of remembering the past, they want to erase it completely and build a new world from scratch. Il Dottore, one of the Harbingers, wants to burn the Irminsul tree, the database of the entire world of Teyvat. If he succeeds, much of Teyvat's past would be erased forever. The Fatui don't want to preserve history. They want to rewrite it into something more stable, something they control. Their goal comes at the cost of memory and truth. The Fatui seek to create a completely new world, one that doesn't exist in memory, but in dreams, ideals, and ambitions. Every move they make is a step toward wiping the slate clean, cutting ties with the past entirely, and shaping a future based on their version of perfection. But creating a new world isn't something just anyone can do. Only Descenders have that kind of power. It takes a Descender to sustain, protect, destroy, and most importantly, create a world. Here's where the third Descender becomes important. The Archon's Gnosis were crafted from the body of the third Descender. These divine objects carry more than elemental power. They're fragments of a godlike being capable of creating a world. If the Tsaritsa is collecting all the Gnosis, it may be because she's assembling the pieces of a creator. With all the Gnosis, she could gain access to the one thing needed, the power to make her dream of a new world real, and completely remake the world without Celestia. In the middle of all this stands the Traveler. The Traveler is a Descender too. Zhongli notes that Traveler is a living atlas, a living backup, a blueprint, not just of the current world, but possibly of every world they've traveled through. But most importantly, Traveler is the record of the truth of what happened and what will happen to Teyvat. To the Abyss Order, the Traveler might carry memories that contradict the version of the old world they're trying to restore. To the Fatui, the Traveler may be a competing Descender, someone with the same power the Tsaritsa is trying to collect and someone with a will to defy her own. The Traveler may be the one thing standing between the world Teyvat was and the world the Fatui want to create. This is why I personally don't think Tsaritsa needs the Traveler to enact any of her plans. Everyone in Teyvat is fighting over what the world should be, but has anyone stopped to ask what it was meant to be in the first place? Originally, Teyvat belonged to the dragons, ruled by the mighty dragon sovereigns, until the heavenly principles descended and took it for themselves. But why? Why Teyvat? Why did they come here at all? What did they want with a world already teeming with life and power? And that brings us to one of my craziest theories yet. Teyvat is an arc. It's the last refuge or artificial world constructed to preserve life from some unknown cosmic catastrophe. The Heavenly Principles didn't conquer Teyvat to rule it. They built or repurposed it as a safe haven from a universe that is falling apart. This could explain the firmament, the strange diversity of life apart from humans, and even the recent signs of instability. Teyvat, being the Hebrew word for ark, draws a direct line to Noah's Ark, which preserved life during a world-ending flood. In the Bible, Noah's chosen to carry a pair of every living being, male and female, onto a vessel. The ark floats above the destruction of the flood that wipes out the entire world until it finds land again, heralding a new beginning after divine judgment. Imagine a giant protective vessel, not filled with animals, but with survivors from other worlds. Planets destroyed, moons shattered, civilizations wiped out. And the Heavenly Principles gathered the last remaining beings and brought them here to start over. This would explain why Teyvat has a fake sky, the firmament. It's a protective dome, a shield meant to keep Teyvat hidden from whatever is destroying worlds out there. It makes sense that Celestia might be punishing actions that could tear a hole in their ark. Cause yeah, that would be bad. Even Alice says something's wrong. The borders of Teyvat are beginning to crumble. So what happens when the shield falls apart? In this Archon quest, Hayden says a world woven from broken memories shall itself be broken. That might not be a metaphor. That might be a nod to the entire design philosophy of Teyvat. The sibling is trying to recreate Khaenri'ah using fragments of the past, because it worked before. That's exactly how the Heavenly Principles might have built Teyvat in the first place, using memories from fallen worlds stitched together into one last safe haven. But memories fade. Systems can fail, and if too many people start changing the code, the whole thing could fall apart. Now let's talk about the Adepti and the Yokai. Where did they come from? Why do they exist outside the rules of normal human evolution? There's no lore that says they developed in Teyvat, because maybe they didn't. Maybe they're refugees, survivors of other planets who were brought here and just integrated. The Ark wasn't just made to save humans, it was made to preserve intelligent life no matter what form it took. Now let's slow down for a second because here's where things get a little weird. We've got characters like Zhongli, the Adepti, and even the Yokai, powerful beings who don't exactly fit into human logic. But here's the thing, if Zhongli or the Adepti came from another planet, shouldn't they remember that? Shouldn't they have at least some memory of life before Teyvat? But they don't. In fact, we're never told how they got there. They just exist. The Adepti in Liyue, the Yokai in Inazuma. And maybe that's the clue. What if they didn't come here as living refugees, but were recreated by the Heavenly Principles using blueprints from other worlds? They were reconstructed in Teyvat as a way to preserve them, but without their originals' memories. They were rebuilt inside this new world like restored backups. Zhongli, the Prime Adeptus, might not be a literal survivor of his original world, but a replica based off the original. He has instincts, knowledge, and power, but no memory of any planet before this one. Because in this version of him, that life never happened. And this could apply across the board. It would explain why beings like the Adepti and the Yokai don't have origin stories. Why there's no explanation for how they got to Teyvat, if humans were supposedly the only things that arrived with the Heavenly Principles. Teyvat is essentially a patchwork of worlds. That's why its rules are so weird. Each fragment of a planet brings its own rules, its own reality code, and when combined, the seams don't always line up. Teyvat is an ark, a survival construct made by the Heavenly Principles to protect what's left of the universe. Its false sky is a shield, and its memory-based infrastructure might be starting to break down. And now everyone's trying to rewrite it. The Abyss Order with their Atlas, the Fatui with the Gnosis, and that's just who we know. If the ark breaks, there might be nothing left beyond it. No stars, no worlds, no sky, just silence. And when it's all gone, only the traveler would remain, drifting through the void, carrying the last memory of a world that no longer exists. The last person who remembers that Teyvat was ever real, and that anyone ever lived there at all.
But remember, this is just a fun, slightly terrifying theory to ponder on while we wait another full year for Dainsleif to come back, say 3 cryptic things, and leave us abyss spiraling again. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.
Thank you so much Red Magic for sponsoring today's video.
I'm your Leafy Lore Keeper Minslif, and I read the Genshin Impact lore so that you don't have to.